Good afternoon, tēnā koutou katoa. Just wait for it to come up. It's quite a big presentation. It's short, hopefully, but it's got a video at the end if that's going to work. But let's just see if it comes up. Okay, we'll make a start anyway. I'm sure it'll come up. So I'm a project manager within Whakatāne District Council, and we've got a number of stormwater projects underway, and I guess there's a catalyst for what we're looking at doing around low impact stormwater design work. I guess fundamental to it is the fact that we recognise we've got a pretty old or traditional stormwater system, lots of pipes, lots of pump stations. We've got a 12-year-old code of practice which has nothing to do with green anything when it comes to storm water. And we're applying for a comprehensive stormwater consent, so we felt that's the opportunity to turn it away from a resource consent process, which is pretty uninspiring, to something which actually transform the way that we do things in Whakatāne. So turn around the process, turn around the perception, and try to create something good out of it. So I'll start with the setting of it. So Whakatāne is quite challenging in the stormwater space. We're a relatively small town in about 16,000 people. We were bordered to the east by an escarpment hillside, up to about sort of 250 metres elevation. And then around the northern and western perimeter we have the stop banks of the Whakatāne. And then we've got a particularly low-lying catchment, which we call Apanui catchment, which is what you can see on screen here. And that's drained by pipes, pumps, catch pits that ultimately drain into the Whakatāne. So in this case here I'm showing 5 pump stations. The blue lines sort of show the direction of water, but they all end up eventually heading out to the stop banks and then either pumped out or flow via gravity to the Whakatāne. The green sort of area you can see in the centre there, that's it's pretty disused, disliked open space. Our places and spaces, people don't like it, and mowing contractors don't like it. And then when we looked at opportunities for stormwater management, we took the approach of optimising what we've got as opposed to building bigger pump stations that can pump more, because ultimately the last thing we want to do, and any stormwater engineer will say this, is to pump stormwater. So we've already got 9 pump stations around town, so we decided to use the area to our benefit, and ultimately what we ended up with was a low impact stormwater design solution, but not necessarily is that something we specifically targeted, but it just shows that if you define your objectives, generally what you end up with is good low impact stormwater design. Try to click through. So zooming in here, so this is the area that I'm talking about. If you can make out the sort of a green and a pink area there, so the pink area is less than half a metre above the higher tide mark. The green area is probably no more than, well, it's less than 1 metre. So our CBD is immediately to the east here, and this is the part here that we are looking at developing into a stormwater wetland retention area detention space. It's bordered heavily by urban dwellings, and this is a picture of it at the moment. So as I mentioned before, it's really unloved. It's an area that you can't mow in winter. It's too wet. The ground elevations are probably 1.5 metres above mean sea. You've got big high fences to the side. No one looks out on it. You walk up one end, if you walk to the end of that picture on the right, there's a big fence in the way. So there's absolutely no connection with people, with water, and with the community as well. And it's a space that that really has had no potential up until now. Just takes a while to click through here. So the vision that we set really was around an optimisation from a stormwater perspective, and that's around minimising how much water we have to pump and maximising the storage. So when we looked at it, we found there was an opportunity to gain about 5,500 cubic metres of stormwater storage, and when you look at that in the context of what we're pumping, it's probably represents something like about 30 minutes of pumping time. So it's actually significant when it comes down to just the stormwater management from flood effects. Obviously there's some heavy metal treatment that can be gained if we create a usable space for stormwater, and then we've got the day lightings. At the moment there's a buried 900 main in that space. It's probably full most of the time with water and sediment, and ultimately whatever we do, it needed to be resilient to the effects of climate change. So that's just not on rainfall. We're also mindful that in the next sort of 10, 15 years, rising groundwater is going to influence the way that we manage stormwater in Whakatāne, and if we can provide something that's compatible with that, that was a pretty big target of ours. So what we did, Andreas came to our door and knocked on it a few times and said, can we help, and we said no, and then ultimately he asked again and then we said yes. So what we came up with was a landscape plan, I guess, that provided a number of benefits to connectivity. It's got a shared use path. This is a proposal at the moment. From here through to here. This is a meandering stream. We've got depression areas here, which are wetland storage. And ultimately what we want people to do is, rather than turn their backs on it, to actually bring the fences down, actually to look on it. We have overland flow paths integrated here from a main road that comes out of town and another one up here. So ultimately in a large rain event, whilst it's still connected to stormwater pump station, obviously it's going to start to pond and retain water. From this outlet here, there's an outlet here existing and an outlet here that feeds into an open drain that goes down to our largest stormwater pump station. That pump station has a fish-friendly gate at the end, so if you're not familiar with that, it's effectively a conventional gate which has cantilever weights in it, so as the tide rises it doesn't close immediately, it will remain open, so it will allow the tidal effects to come back up through that catchment and indeed reach as far up as this park. So this is an artist's impression on the right, and that's how it looks at the moment. So we've got some well-established trees that we want to work around. Again, it's a case of optimising. We don't want to create something that's not there already. That's the walkway across the top, and that's effectively cutting down into that park by a couple of metres to gain that volume. In doing so, we would reach the groundwater, and as I mentioned before, it is connected via a pipe network that will see the tidal flows from the Whakatāne. Generally, it goes up and down by about 500 or 600 millimetres each tidal cycle, so we're hopeful we'll get some flushing as well. This is another view, similar sort of thing, and again this is what it's like on the left, and again just enhancing its space from amenity and stormwater benefits as well. So the picture on the left there, so the buried drain is underneath the depression area there, so that's going to be removed, daylighted. That was probably only installed in the early 90s. It shows sort of how far our thinking's come in the last 20 odd years. This project evolved from the fact that we've told our elected members that were applying for consent, and we wanted to showcase a project or lead a project with our community to show them what's possible. So we presented in the way that this is a space and clearly there's no life or energy in that space, and they're buying into the fact that stormwater pumping is not resilient in terms of either cost in the future, resilience to climate change, and then of course it had the stormwater treatment, and our council has come to the view that that's not where we are now, but that's where we need to be. So when we described to this project that it actually ticks all those boxes just by virtue of being a good solution, irrespective of it being a low impact design by the way as well, we had quite a bit of buy-in. But I'd say if you were to present this, certainly a few years ago, our place and spaces people were, they instantly see the negatives of planting, maintenance, who's going to maintain it, all these sort of questions. But ultimately, if we're not going to store water within the catchment, we're going to have to pump it. Otherwise, the flood risks aren't going to be managed. So I felt that was a pretty good driver, to get them to buy in.